Hey guys, Kelade here. It's finally happened. Blizzard has finally caved after, what is this, years? We are finally getting uncapped AOE. Well, to some extent. It's not a full on, everything's uncapped, but for all intents and purposes, we're making progress in the right direction. So here is the latest 9.1.5 development notes for the PTR. Hopefully we'll have access to the PTR on Friday and we can kind of test some of the things and we can kind of confirm some small little questions that we might have. But let's just go through this. I'm only going to go through kind of the important stuff, at least what I deem important, which is more so the actual gameplay and combat, right? Especially warrior related stuff. But really quickly before we dive into the AOE stuff is that all cooldowns 2 minutes or longer now reset at the end. Great. You know, it used to be 3-minute cooldowns only. I'm glad that they're reducing it. I just hope at one point they do all of them, because if you look at the warrior cooldowns, everything is basically 1.5 minutes. So we are, I think, now officially going to be the class or the spec that have the longest cooldown that does not reset at the end of a raid encounter or a boss reset. So still going to have to hold on to not fully DPSing trash right before the boss is reset. But we'll get there eventually, I hope. But here is what we are all here for. The following area effect abilities are no longer maximum target cap and instead deal reduced damage beyond 5 targets. This is where I'm like, it's not full on uncapped, right? It's still going to do that thing where it'll hit them, but it'll just do a little more damage. I think we'll have to actually go on the PTR and log on. Whenever they say reduce damage, I mean, it's not always really clear what that actually means, so we'll have to log on and we'll have to see. Now, I'm hoping that the list here is not finished. There are actually some specs that don't appear here. Either maybe Blizzard just hates them or they just haven't gone around them to them yet. But I think like Outlaw Rogue does not make an appearance. So either Blizzard doesn't like Outlaw Rogues or, you know, whatever it is. And then the other thing is, you know, essentially there's some developer note here. I'll send you guys a link if you guys actually want to see the exact like patch notes, but just saying that, hey, you know, feedback. I don't know why it took them so many years to respond to the feedback and listen to it, but finally, we have made progress. Okay. As always, tuning will change the result of this shift based on your feedback from PTR. Feedback should be, let's just do all of it. Just all the abilities that like look like they hit everything should hit everything, right? But here we go. All right, so Warriors, first off the bat, across all 3 specs, Whirlwind is going to be uncapped, right? It's still going to do, you know, 5 and then do slightly reduced damage. But the big winner, I would say, between Arms and Fury, Arms is huge because literally every single thing that Arms has that has some type of AOE is literally like these 4 things, right? Blaze-Storm, uncapped, Cleave, uncapped, Ravager. I mean, Ravager makes sense because it's basically a Blaze-Storm, right? Dreadnought uncapped is the big money maker here, right? Because Sweeping Strikes, right? You're gonna press that overpower, boom, you have 2 Dreadnought lines, and you're just insane now. Now that has no cap, you can just go crazy on the big pulls. Right? Because as long as you spend rage, right? As long as you can get that resets on your overpower, you can just keep Dreadnoughting away. And of course, you combine this with Carrying Arms, where the Carrying ability already does basically uncapped AOE. Well, at least the Capstone trait does, right? Where you do damage and it does like additional damage over time, and then, you know, it does the main damage and then does reduce damage in AOE. So that kind of already happened to Carrion. This is only going to make that even stronger. And then for Fury, you are going to get the Whirlwind. Yeah, I think the question that we'll have to test once we get into PTR is, well, can that also include the abilities that get cleaved from Whirlwind? My initial thought is probably no, because they never launched that way. Even in Legion, when we got this with the Whirlwind cleaving stuff, it was always target capped. So maybe we can hope. If it's somehow like the Whirlwind cleave abilities are also not target capped, then Fury becomes insane. If not, it's whatever. Because Blaze-Storm, yes, that's going to be uncapped, but Blaze-Storm already hits 8 targets. Now, the key thing I do want to know is that, please, Blizzard, think about this a little bit. Because I know on the note here above, they're like, you know, things that hit 5 targets do full damage, but beyond 5 it does reduced. They need to realize that some of the abilities here already do more damage to more than 5 targets, right? Blaze-Storm does damage to 8 targets. So hopefully, if there are 8 targets, you're not somehow doing less damage because you're doing fall damage to the next, to the 6, 7, 8 target, right? So just hopefully that's in their mind. But wait, that is not it. If you keep reading, there's also conduit changes. For Venthyr, it's kind of nice. I mean, if you play Venthyr in Mythic Plus, I mean, you're already doing lower damage, but at least there's a little bit to make it better, right? Harrowing Punishment. I'm actually a big advocate of Harrowing Punishment as long as it's played correctly. For Venthyr, you just have to condemn as much as humanly possible, right? Adds above 80%, switch to it, condemn it. Adds below 35% or below, switch to it, condemn it. So I actually think if you take advantage of condemning as much as you can in Mythic Plus and whatever fight you would use Harrowing Punishment in, this is pretty good. Okay, cool. But that's if you're currently playing Venthyr and you're currently playing Fury, right? The Merciless Bone Grinder conduit change. I actually think this is a bigger buff for Fury than it is for Arms. This is one of those conduits where even though you have to be Arms to kind of like use it, this conduit can and does benefit Fury too. So if you play Fury and you use Blaze-Storm and then you Whirlwind, it's going to get the Merciless Bone Grinder damage buff. And I actually think this is a bigger buff for Fury because Fury uses Whirlwind more than Arms does. And then there's Hack and Slash. Okay, whatever. So that's the AOE. Let's keep going that direction, right? More things. Hopefully there's not specs that are left out of this. It would feel really bad to be them. So praying for the Outlaw Rogues here. All right. Other big change. Now this change has already been announced and we've already talked about this for a couple of weeks now, I think, on stream. But really good to see all these changes coming through. Conduit switchings. Once you reach a certain amount of renown, I guess we'll figure out what this is. Freely switch among any of the 4 covenants without cooldown restriction. Finally, right? If you actually want to do different types of content in the game, you can actually play the best covenant without getting kicked out of a group. So now, I don't think people are going to be that crazy and, you know, go into one fight as a covenant, hearth back, switch the covenant, get someone back in the new covenant. Maybe if your guild like takes like a mid-rate break for like 10 minutes, you could do that, but I feel like if things are on a farm, people are going to be too lazy to do this, and it's probably not worth the time effort anyway, so I don't think that's the worry. I do think it's nice though, like if you raid with one, let's say, you know, I'm going to go raid as Night Fae on my warrior, and then I'm going to do Mythic Plus the next day or afterwards, I can then switch to Kyrian, right? And then if let's say I want to do PvP on the 3rd day, I can then switch to Venthyr, right? Actually playing the best covenant for each of the different types of things that are out there and not have to essentially be forced to make 4 different warriors, right? If I want to be actually invited to the groups. Because all intents and purposes, even though for a lot of people we say, realistically, you could play all covenants for most of the content in the game and you're going to be fine, right? Yes, that's the case, but people are still not going to invite you because they're like, well, why would I invite you for Mythic Plus or PvP when you can invite that guy over there, right? That's playing the same class, similar gear, similar skilled, but they're the better covenant. Now, this won't be a problem. So good job, Blizzard, for finally seeing this and actually going with kind of the community feedback and doing this. So this is great. The other huge thing, as well as use cosmetic rewards that have earned from one covenant, even if they are currently a member of a different one. I know we normally talk about gameplay, but sometimes you just do more damage when you look better. And in my opinion, you should always use the Venthyr swords. They are by far the best transmog weapons of all 4 covenants. Okay, conduit energy also being removed. Yep, I mean, this should have literally happened before the expansion came out. But here we are, you know, almost a year since the expansion's been out. Hasn't been a year yet. Whatever it is, finally getting rid of this shitty thing, which makes sense, right? You kind of need this to be removed if you are wanting to freely switch covenants, right? It just kind of goes hand in hand. So glad that is finally going away and you can now change conduit energy as you will. Great. And then there's a few things that are like cool, you know, good quality of life stuff, you know, new stuff, sanctums, a lot of stuff that are really good for alts, which I'm all for, right? And more alts in the game means people get bored of the game less and potentially more people queuing up for things on their alts, right? Just creates more people looking for a group for both, you know, Mythic Plus, PvP, or even for raids, right? the other big thing that's coming is the Legion time walking. Now, time walking by itself, it's whatever, right? There's people out there that do time walking, and there's people that don't. You do you, right? If you want the time walking. But what's big this time around is not only are we getting time walking, but there's this new thing, which is great. Very rare nowadays for new things to come out in WoW, but time worn keystones. I think I was talking about this previously. Is like when you look at the current like game systems, a lot of stuff that's happening in BFA and Shadowlands, we're already done in Legion, right? It's just like, oh, Mythic Plus and Legion were great. Let's just keep doing Mythic Plus. Oh, legendary items were great. Let's keep doing legendary items, right? A lot of those systems like, oh, like artifact power is great. Let's do anima, right? Let's do whatever other power there was in the previous expansion, or Azrai power, right? Just copy the Legion version. But I am glad that they're doing new things, though technically this is still copying Legion stuff because you're getting Legion dungeons. But you know what? I'll let it slide this time around, okay? But what's really cool about this is the ability to get old items, right? So you're gonna be able to talk to a guy, Orbos, giving you a key that you can use to do max level Mythic Plus difficulties for these 6 dungeons mentioned here, right? So that's the important key factor, is that these are the 6 dungeons you can do. So these are 6 dungeons you're gonna get loot from. And then it's not just any loot. It's gonna be reward loot of the same eye level as Shadowlands Mythic Plus dungeons, which is huge. And it'll count towards your Great Vault, but you can't get the item from Great Vault. What does that mean? That means you're only getting the loot from the dungeon, so the maximum eye level is 246. And of course, Port of Stars. We got the Jeweled Signet of Melandris. I mean, there were so many. I did this dungeon so many times in Legion, okay? During, I think, the 2 weeks that this thing is out, I think it's 2. Guys, you gotta get in on Port of Stars, and you gotta get this ring. Because in its current state, if they allow it to have that equipped auto attack damage increased by 10%, it's best in slot. No questions asked. There is going to be no competitors there. So easy clap. Farm that on a plus 15. Get a 246 and you're good to go. Well, I guess you can probably upgrade it. But maybe you don't have to like full on to a plus 15. You can probably just upgrade it. But yeah, it can be upgraded at Valor points. So maybe you don't have to farm it at a plus 15. Just get it, right? And then make sure you get it to a 246. The other thing that is big is when you look at the current trinkets in Shadowlands and even in BFA, most of them Blizzard have been afraid to allow to do AOE damage, right? Because they're afraid of creating these active trinkets that are too strong for some reason, right? Or at least the active damaging trinkets are too strong. Like they can't be affected by your buffs, right? They can't be, they don't do massive AOE, or do they do crazy drop off damage? But when you look at the Legion trinkets, that has not happened. So Blizzard, turn off your ears for a second, right? So all these Legion trinkets in their current state, unless Blizzard actually goes in and nerfs them, they just AOE, right? Windscar Whetstone was a trinket that just AOE'd everything to the same number. So if they don't actually change this, some of these trinkets are going to be huge. I haven't checked the other 6 dungeons and I forgot what trinkets comes out of there. But I do know at one point Windscar Whetstone was really strong. There might be one of the trinkets in the other 5 dungeons. Just didn't take a look at them yet, but just think about that for a second. Any of these active damage AoE trinkets could be huge. All right, Blizzard, you're good. Pretend I didn't say anything. All right, next part. Scrolling down a little bit more things. Islands. I'm guessing this island expedition thing, King by yourself, is for transmog, I'm going to assume. I'm not sure why you would be doing that at the moment. Mod stuff, player versus player. I did find it kind of hilarious that instead of just making up new titles, they just use the same title and put a rank 1 and rank 2 on this. But this makes sense. It's essentially better, smoother reward scaling based on your PvP achievements. Skipping quests, and then of course legendaries. You can now refund an existing legendary item for your full refund cost. I'm actually surprised that they went for a full 100% refund, not like an 80% or 75 or whatever, 50, but really good. I mean, the more closer to 100%, and as it is right now, it's better for the players, right? So, this is the case for if you accidentally crafted a wrong legendary for a different covenant, right? You can then get it back and craft a new one. Or if you craft a legendary, let's say with great haste, and then once you got more geared, you realize that, haste mastery is maybe better for you, you can then just refund it and craft a new one, right? So actually a really good change. I wonder if people were making like reports of getting the legendary refunded and they just like, let's just do this. Not sure that's actually happening, but good change nonetheless. And then of course, the more quality of life improvements, all things great. But I think the most important thing here is the group finder improvements. As you guys know, I pug a lot, especially for Mythic Plus and PvP. So anything to improve group finder is a +1 in my book, right? Numeric range, better search functions, great. Autofill your information based on your keystone. So when you open up a group finder, you create a group, puts in the keystone automatically. I mean, that's just great. No reason why I wouldn't see that as a good change. You can now set a minimum Mythic Plus or PvP rating requirement for applicants. This is great. I mean, you can already do eye level to some extent, so that already is a thing. Mythic Plus, yeah, I think it's whatever. I mean, you currently already have Radar IO, so you can already do this to some extent. But having an in-game feature, I guess that's fine. The thing I think that's actually huge is the PvP. The Mythic Plus I'm not worried about as much. PvP is actually huge because there is no like good Radar IO alternative for PvP, right? Now there are PvP websites and I've used them. Like there's like a French website that's pretty good, but you still have to log on the website, right? Type the people's name in, and it does give you some really good history about the players. But having something in the game is just absolutely huge, especially for PvP, right? Because even when you go on those rating websites or any of those websites, they're using like logged out data, right? And they don't have like the most accurate information. Whereas I would assume a PvP rating in the game is really up to date. You can actually put in people's current rating, your current rating, and actually find groups that are in the closer range, right? And guarantee that they are. So really good change. I'm not sure what playstyle is. I'm going to assume playstyle is like melee or ranged. But I guess we'll find out once we have this PTR access here. But all in all, I think really good changes. Maybe if we keep pushing Blizzard, they'll eventually do maybe they'll do 2 legendaries early. Maybe they'll do 2 legendaries in 9.1.5, or they'll have 2 legendaries being able to warn 9.2. Maybe they'll release tier sets in the next raid. So all these things looks like we're at least in a good trajectory. Now I think the reasons that they're doing this, maybe not the best. Maybe they're trying to get good PR, but hey, we'll take it. If this means that we're gonna get better feedback, taken in and actually improve upon the game, all great things. But as always, thanks for checking out the video, guys. Feel free to subscribe to see more. See ya.